20.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the 3rd and 20 Dynasty Podcast. Big podcast coming at you. It's the one right after the Super Bowl. So you know what? I'm going to just throw it to Jake right now. Jake, what are your initial thoughts? Is Tom Brady immortal? Or is he just never going to lose again?
Dude, if you didn't think he was the GOAT before this, you have no excuse now. It's not Belichick. It's not the Patriots. It's goddamn Tom Brady. It is the Tom Brady system. He's proved it, hands down. He's the GOAT. I don't think anyone can debate that anymore. And I'm a Giants fan, obviously. We beat him twice in the Super Bowl, but still, he's the GOAT.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like no one really expected what was going to happen with the Bucs just destroying the Chiefs. I don't think anyone really could have predicted that. The Chiefs' offensive line was decimated by injuries. They just struggled to stop the Bucs defense. Devin White had a hell of a game. I mean, we're not really here to do recaps and whatnot because we are a Dynasty podcast, so we're more focused on that. I think the one main Dynasty point of note right now I'd focus on is that Patrick Mahomes needs foot surgery. They're saying that he should be fine and ready to come back for the regular season and whatnot, so I'm not too worried about that. The only other thing I was really watching, and you know, I'm very interested in, is the Bucs running back situation. You know,
Playoff Lenny.
Yeah, Leonard Fournette just went off in the playoffs. I don't know what the Bucs' long-term plans with him are, but I think this could be a sneaky good time to buy Ronald Jones, get him as your RB3 kind of flex play guy. I think he'd be a nice cheap addition that you could just feel comfortable playing, you know, weekly. What do you guys think?
I think the first thing that we have to remember is that Ronald Jones has been injured this entire playoff run. So I think that's one of the main reasons we saw playoff Lenny seeing a bulk of the workload. In the last two games of the playoffs, the NFC Championship and the Super Bowl, we did see Ronald Jones get a little bit more carries, but I agree with you, JT. If I'm looking to buy a running back, Ronald Jones he's still a young back. There's a lot of tread left on those tires. He really showed us this year that he could be the number one running back for that football team if asked. And at the end of the day, you wouldn't think of it, but his stats this year were a lot better than I was expecting. I was looking at the running back rankings, and you know, comparing Ronald Jones to all the rookie running backs, for example, the 2020 rookies, like Ronald Jones, I'm pretty sure outscored almost all of them. Not Jonathan Taylor, I don't believe, and James Robinson, I imagine, was also very close to him. But aside from them, like, he outscored a lot of those guys, and he still is really young with a lot left to prove. So I agree with you. I think that Ronald Jones is a pretty decent buy, especially if you don't have to pay a first for him.
Yeah, I mean,
I definitely agree. I don't think paying a first is worth for Ronald Jones here. I would want a much more established, proven back for my first-round pick. But I think this is a good buy. My question to you guys, though, is any stock left in Keyshawn Vaughn? Any?
Yeah, I still think
I want
like
no parts of Keyshawn Vaughn.
So that's pretty much a very low-end draft pick.
I'd probably rather take the mid-third.
I don't think you can just write him off after one season in a system that, with Bruce Arians, has always been shying away from rookie backs. That he had a couple of mistakes, even though he had some good reps, some good plays. He just had a couple of crucial mistakes that kept him on the bench. Like, I don't think you can just instantly give up on him after 1 year. Like, if you drafted him, you might as well hold him.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I mean I've seen a lot of mock drafts that even have the Bucs taking a running back, you know, late in the first round this year. I don't personally think they will. I think they have other needs to address with some other upcoming free agents on the defensive side of the ball. But I think Keyshawn Vaughn might be another potential buy low here.
Yeah, 100. They're taking a pass rusher in the draft.
They have to. I agree. Their whole defensive line is like a free agent right now. So.
Yeah. That's why I'm not that concerned about them going out and drafting one. But when you think about it, right, Najee Harris is only like 5 months younger than Ronald Jones. Ronald Jones has been in the league. I think this is his 3rd year. Like, Ronald Jones was just extremely young coming into the league. And, you know, like, he's going to get bigger over time. He's probably been, you know, going through weight training and whatnot. I think he's a solid buy because, you know, he's getting lumped into, like, that David Montgomery kind of category. And I think that's really doing a disservice to Ronald Jones because I see, like, we've seen game-breaking plays by Ronald Jones. Like, I just don't think David Montgomery has that other than his one run against the Packers this year, which the Packers' rush defense was one of the worst in the leagues. So Ronald Jones is someone that you could probably buy for really cheap and someone that you could feel comfortable sliding into your flex. That's all I got to say about that. Anything else you guys want to talk about with the Chiefs game? I mean, Patrick Mahomes was running all over the place. Go ahead, Frank.
There's one thing that I need to bring up because I was low on this guy coming in, and I feel very vindicated after the Super Bowl. Instead of giving up on Keyshawn Vaughn, are we giving up on Mecole Hardman? Holy crap,
yes.
Was that a rough performance when they needed him most?
I never saw it in the guy either, to be honest with you. I think the Chiefs wide receiver is, like, it's kind of, you know, downplayed and not talked about, like, how struggling they really are. Like, yes, you have Tyreek Hill, who's been able to, you know, go off for over 200 yards in the first quarter against the Bucs before. But it's him and it's Kelsey. Sammy Watkins has been, you know, very disappointing. He can play at times. He is always struggling with injuries. Sometimes DeMarcus Robinson looks like he's playing for the other team with the balls that he drops. They're just, like, placing his hands. It's just when him and Mecole Hardman are like your other guys that you gotta rely on. Like, I just think the Chiefs need to go out and they need to get wide receiver somewhere. Like, because this isn't cutting it. Like, Travis Kelce is only getting older. Tyreek Hill basically looked like a gadget player in the Super Bowl. Like, that's not something that you want to see out of someone who's very much considered a top 5 dynasty wide receiver. It's definitely an issue that people are not talking about. I mean, maybe they will now in the coming weeks because of all the, you know, this is the last game and something everyone's going to analyze. But would you guys be surprised if they go out and draft a wide receiver or if they go out and sign one free agency? I don't really know what the cap situation is, but yeah, right?
I don't even think Sorry, Lounis, real quick.
Go ahead, Frank.
I don't even think the question is if they take a receiver. I think the question is which type of receiver do they take? You know, are they going to go for a Rashad Bateman at the end of the first round and try and almost replace Sammy Watkins? Or are they going to go for more of someone like a Kadarius Toney and kind of try to have what they wanted out of Mecole Hardman, a guy that you can use as like a vertical player down the field as well as put the ball in his hands and make plays?
Yeah, and backing up Frank's point, initially you would think they'd go for, like Frank mentioned, someone to replace Watkins and kind of a bigger receiver like a Bateman. But I won't forget the report from last draft. The Chiefs were calling teams about moving up for Ruggs before he got drafted super early. Like, the Chiefs really wanted Ruggs last draft. So I wouldn't be surprised if they do go, like, kind of unconventional, not go another big receiver and look at guys like Frank mentioned Toney. I'm also thinking maybe Rondale Moore at the end of the first round. I wouldn't be surprised if they went one of those guys, or Bateman, Amon-Ra, one of those taller receivers.
I would love to see Tylan Wallace on the Chiefs. I'm putting it out there right now. This guy would be unbelievable as the number 3 option in the Kansas City Chiefs offense. He would provide everything that they would need. I just think he would take their offense to an even another level, and he's a guy that they could probably get in maybe the second round.
Yeah, they're picking at the end of the second round, but I think he should be there. My question is, though, you've got the Batemans, Moores, Chase. Obviously, Jamar Chase and Devontae Smith are not going to make it to pick 31, right? So we'll just cut them off. Just forget about them. But, you know, Moore, Bateman, potentially Toney. I don't really know where NFL teams are on their players, and especially the Chiefs. That's who's going to be drafting. But if Rondale Moore or Rashad Bateman went not first overall, but went in the first round to the Chiefs, are they your wide receiver 1? Like, do they get bumped up that high?
I don't think they can get. I don't think they can get bumped up over Chase and Smith and potentially Waddle, depending on how bad of a landing spot he goes to. But he would definitely. Whoever gets drafted to the Chiefs as a wide receiver is going to immediately jump up everyone's boards. We saw it even happen with Mecole Hardman, who was just basically a speed guy at Georgia. So I think whoever goes there will shoot up boards. I just don't think over those elite talents.
I'm glad you guys didn't fall in my trap there, because that's exactly what happened with Clyde Edwards-Helaire last year, right? Because CEH was the 4th probably prospect for most people. Like, he was definitely behind Jonathan Taylor and DeAndre Swift, and then you had the likes of Cam Akers and J.K. Dobbins, like, you know, just depending on preference of people. But they were pretty consistently ranked ahead of CEH, and then all of a sudden he gets drafted first round to the Chiefs, and he's getting picked in the first round of startups, and it's just like, you gotta temper expectations. Like, I get it's the Chiefs, but there's only so much an offense can do, and when the prospect isn't as good as the 4 other prospects in front of him, like, it's hard to expect that much out of him. So while I think if Bateman goes there, he would be like definitely my wide receiver 2. I feel like Bateman on the Chiefs, but I'm still not willing to draft him over Jamar Chase, unless he just goes to an absolute terrible place. But even then, I think I still have Chase. But something that people have to remember, and I guarantee when the draft happens, people are just going to forget about it. People are going to forget about what's happened every year before, and everyone's failed and are going to be doomed to repeat the past. And that's just my warning. I'm saying it now in February, but come April, come May, everyone's going to do the same thing again. And I'm just going to sit here and say, I told you so.
So, before we move on, because I really like this topic, let's go back to what happened with Mecole Hardman. So, let's just assume Kansas City, they need a pass rusher. Let's assume they take pass rusher at 31. And then with pick 63, I believe it is, they take, let's just say, Demetric Felton or Shi Smith or Nico Collins. Where are they going now? Because this is a pretty loaded class. I have to imagine they're sneaking into that end part of the first round, right?
I think they're in that next tier, because we just go back and listen to our tier episode. We did it last time, but I think he goes into that like 3rd tier, just because I think those guys are probably, we had him in our 4th or 5th tier, and I just think they'd move up a tier, maybe 2, depending on how high you are on a guy. I think you're looking at one of those early 2nd round wide receivers.
Yeah, I don't think I can go late first, because and kind of the comparison with Clyde Edwards-Helaire, we're generally, yes, that's true. But the case, I guess, more for Clyde Edwards-Helaire is we saw because you're thinking if they draft him first round, and which he was the first half of the season, he's the main only running back, and he was RB9 before they brought in Le'Veon and his injuries. But I think the logic with him was kind of like, you saw what Damian Williams did, and Damian Williams was a very good fantasy running back when he was starting for the Chiefs in 2018, 2019. Versus, so you're hoping Clyde Edwards-Helaire can fill that role and be even better. Versus if they draft a receiver here, I haven't seen like the number 3 target on the Chiefs put up consistently good numbers. Like, at the end of the day, you're still the number 3 receiving threat on that offense. And Mahomes, while he does pass for a ton of yards, like, he does spread it out a decent much. So it would be like a first where the number 3 in that offense put up a really good fantasy season. Because I don't think Watkins or anyone has had, like, there's been good stretches, but there hasn't been like an entire season where like, oh, the wide receiver 3 in Kansas City is like a wide receiver 2 in fantasy. And by the way, when I say 3, I'm including Tyreek and Kelsey.
I mean, yeah, it makes sense because Travis Kelsey was one of the top receivers in the league with yards. But yeah, anything else you guys have to add before we move on to our next segment? All right, now on to our next segment. We got something different for you guys because we are in the off season, and it's going to be something that kind of changes person to person. We're going against consensus to you guys, and we're going to say what players we think are overrated. What players we want no part of at the price they're at. What players that we think you guys should go and sell off if they're on your teams, or, not go out and trade for because they're just going to drop in value, according to us. And these are going to be hot takes. They're going to be against consensus. So just keep that in mind. But we'll flip it to Frank first. Frank, who are your overrated players currently in Dynasty football?
All right. Well, this was tough to decide on because I've got a lot of guys that I think are overrated. I'm looking at a lot of you 2020 rookies out there. I think that looking at startup prices, these are guys that if you're drafting a lot of them too high, you're taking the bait. Remember that the goal is to win championships. And two players, I decided to go. I've been crapping on the 2020 rookies saying sell, a lot of them for too long. So I decided, hey, I'll let the other guys take them. But my two players are two guys that, one I was a fan of coming out, and I'll start with him. That's Chris Godwin. Chris Godwin, I really liked coming out. I thought he had a lot of great tools, but man, every time I watch Chris Godwin play, whether it's doing a film analysis or just watching the games on Sunday, the guy just drops passes. He drops so many passes. He makes plays, but it's just for every play he makes, he has like two fuck-ups. So to me, Chris Godwin, at the price that he's at, you have to take him. In startup drafts, he's around what? Receiver 10, receiver 12, somewhere around there, I'd imagine.
The January ADP had him at wide receiver 12. Yeah.
Like, man, I can easily list you probably 15 receivers plus that I'd rather have over Chris Godwin. So, for that reason, he is my first overrated player. And my second overrated player is someone that I've really never been a fan of. And that's Hunter Henry. I have Hunter Henry on one of my teams, and I am going to sell him. I can guarantee you that. Hunter Henry is the classic. Oh, well, this guy could be a top 5 tight end. Look, you remember that one season he had where he had a good stretch of 4 or 5 games? And then what does he do every year? He puts up 600 yards, a handful of touchdowns, and is injured a couple of games. I'm just tired of it. It's the same story every year with Hunter Henry, and I feel like we're just going to get the same Hunter Henry every single season. He is your classic, could be tight end, top 5 tight end, wasteland tight end. I want no part of him.
Okay, Frank. I've got a couple questions for you. Both the guys that you picked happen to be free agents. We're hearing reports that Chris Godwin's, likely to get franchise tagged by the Bucs. The Bucs want him back. I don't really know what's going on with the Hunter Henry situation, but what I'm asking is, do you like their value more if they stay with the teams they're with, or if they go out and leave and go somewhere else?
I like them a lot more if they stay where they're at. What were you saying, JT?
My whole thing is, so you think there's the situation they're in, it's going to be hard for them to beat it going elsewhere?
A wise man once said that the best players don't go into free agency because the teams want to keep them. I think that you were the one that pointed this out a couple of episodes ago. If you just look at players that leave in free agency, more times than not, they're going to go extremely down in value. I think that Austin Hooper is a tremendous example. Austin Hooper, great football player. Look at what he did for the Browns. The Browns are a great team, and Austin Hooper was at the forefront of that. But this is fantasy football, and this is Dynasty Fantasy Football. All these changing environments and changing of scenarios, I'm not a fan of. And quite frankly, with Hunter Henry, I'm not sure the situation can get better. This is a Los Angeles Chargers team that is notorious for using one tight end, and riding one guy, especially if they're hot. Look at what Antonio Gates did for years and years and years and years and years. That was what they were expecting out of Hunter Henry. Hunter Henry, to me, just wasn't and isn't consistent enough for a team like that, and I think that they would rather look elsewhere instead of paying Hunter Henry $10+ million. They'll let him walk. Chris Godwin, I think for me, I don't think he's a bad player. I just don't value him as that top 15 receiver. So Chris Godwin, I'm definitely less overrated on. Hunter Henry, I want no part of.
I agree with you on Henry. There are two things I kind of slightly disagree on with Godwin. I think depending on the situation, a different landing spot for Godwin could be pretty interesting. If he signs somewhere where he could hypothetically be the number one, which I think there's a couple situations where it could happen. Like I know, for example, the Giants are looking for receivers this offseason. If Chris Godwin signed with the Giants, he'd probably be the number one there. And I think that might help his value.
I think it
might help initially, but
I think it would. I think it would help his perceived value. I don't think it would actually increase his stats.
That's fair.
I'm just being a negative Nancy. I just remember clear in my mind watching both of those before the NFC Championship or whatever game it was, with the divisional round with the Saints and the Bucks playing each other. I just remember seeing it in those Bucks games where the Bucks are getting crushed, thinking to myself, man, one of these guys needs to step up. Mike Evans is getting doubled every play. Gronk looks a little washed. Pass pro is holding up. It's just these receivers against that physical Saints defense weren't able to create separation and make some tight catches. And a large reason of that was because Godwin was the guy that wasn't showing up. I don't think that Godwin's a bad player. It's just, I think that if you ask him to have more of a role in an offense and be that reliable number one X receiver that everyone loves and likes to talk about, I would hate that as a Godwin owner, and I would run away from that situation because I just don't believe that he can do that. Now we're not comparing Godwin as a wide receiver 2 anymore. We're comparing Godwin to the great X receivers at that point, asking him, hey, you're going to go to a team that has a bottom half of the league passing attack, and you're going to be the guy that has to, get bracketed and make plays. There's not a whole lot of guys that can consistently do that.
Yeah, and now all that is a fair point. I think one of the bigger fears for me with Godwin would be how will he do when he has to play against the corners Mike Evans does play against, because Mike Evans does help him in that sense. I will say though with Godwin, there aren't a ton of receivers who are 24 years old with a 1,300-yard year under their belt. And with the drops the second half of the season, he did have the finger surgery midway through the year this year. So obviously, I don't know how much of an impact that did play, or if that does continue into next season, that's a legit concern. But it is something that for me, I'm hopeful that it was the finger surgery that had an impact the second half of the season with some of those drops, because those were a legit issue, especially towards the very end of the year.
Gentlemen, can I remind you of the certain phenomena that is known as the Juju effect?
Yeah.
I'm afraid.
Yeah.
Chris Godwin, if he goes somewhere else and he's not with Mike Evans as the number one wide receiver, I'm selling. Especially like Frank said, I know Lounis, you pointed out, if he ends up on the Giants, Daniel Jones and Chris Godwin as the main people supposed to run. I mean, obviously Saquon's there, but the main two, supporting the passing attack for the Giants. I can't get behind that, especially at wide receiver 1 value, essentially in Dynasty. I mean, albeit low end, borderline, top wide receiver 2 is where he is, but that's just a pass for me. I think you guys cover that pretty well. Any other thoughts on him or Hunter Henry?
Yeah, one quick thing on Chris Godwin here. Obviously, you guys, and I tend to agree with it for the most part, but saying if he were to move, he would lose value. Hypothetically, what if he signs with the Bills? What if he signs with the Chargers, where he can still kind of continue that role, behind Keenan Allen or behind a Stephon Diggs? Do you guys think he continues to thrive, or does he get better? What happens in that scenario?
I think it helps him. Or even Green Bay with Devontae Adams.
Yeah,
I think we're really dreaming here.
Yeah, those are big what ifs. I mean, if it does happen, obviously I think he's going to do better. But at that point, though, I just think his value is going to, really increase because everyone's going to see him on this other team with, Josh Allen or Justin Herbert as his quarterback, other than 44-year-old Tom Brady. So they're going to see that long future ahead. But I just I think the value that Chris Godwin's going to go up to is not the value that he's actually worth. And at that point, I just sell and, I cash in. There's no problem cashing in on Chris Godwin and just getting a ton of value back. That's my thought. I don't know if you guys have any disagreeing thoughts to that.
No, I just think he's a glorified mid-tier wide receiver too.
Who had a great year.
He's not a bad player. I'm not saying that I wouldn't have him on my team, and if I'm not getting good offers, I'm not going to sell him. It's just I'm not going to come out here and act like I have him valued as a top 12 receiver or not necessarily even close to it. There's just a lot of guys I'd rather have over him.
Completely agree, Frank. Completely agree.
All right, JT, why don't you...
Yeah. Real quick, it just has me a little bit worried that we're all agreeing on this. I mean...
I still have him at...
No, Lounis doesn't agree.
Lounis disagrees. All right.
Because I will say
concerned.
this year, how many games did he play? In 12 games, he had 840 receiving yards while suffering an injury midway through the year. So that put him on pace for a little bit over 1,000 on the season. In a new year where they also brought in AB. I would still, and just because of his age, he's still 24 years old. Like, he's entering free agency at a young age. I would still put him at, I think, like wide receiver 12.
All right, that's fair. I'm glad you're on the other side. I mean, only time will tell who's right here. But I thought if we're all on consensus, and maybe it's not that overrated, maybe we don't, maybe we're all wrong. Who knows? I got some spicy ones for you guys, though. We were kind of talking before. Frank was hating on the 2020 rookie class. I think it's been a very good class, but I do agree that at this point, everyone's just so high in value on them that I'm going to have to take them down a couple notches. And so my first guy, Joe Burrow, the Cincinnati Bengals quarterback, depending where you look, it looks like he's going around quarterback 8, quarterback 9. So, mid to lower end quarterback 1. And while I like Joe Burrow, I like him a lot, it's just a lot of investment to put into a quarterback who, just tore up his knee completely. Not that I'm that concerned about that aspect, but I am concerned about the Bengals in general and the team. I'm definitely concerned about them. That's issue 1. Issue 2 I have with Joe Burrow is, from what we've seen of Joe Burrow, yeah, he's played pretty well for a rookie quarterback, but, he's not, he didn't light the world on fire like people thought he might, and he's not like a quarterback, mid-range quarterback 1 numbers. I mean, it just took a lot of pass attempts. Most of his points came against that one game against Cleveland where he threw the ball over 50 times. His completion percentage was, let me check real quick, he was 21st in the league completion percentage behind the likes of Cam Newton and Ben Roethlisberger and Gardner Minshew. While I like Joe Burrow and I like his prospects going into the future, I just think his value is very high right now. Where if I could flip him for the 101 in a Superflex league and get Trevor Lawrence, I would. I don't know if 101's selling for Joe Burrow. I would. Don't give me that look.
Sorry, Kyle.
No, we were talking.
There isn't a ton of quarterbacks that'll get you 101.
Yeah, well, Joe Burrow, though, we were talking last week, and we had him, Trevor Lawrence ranked right around Dak Prescott, a little under Dak Prescott. Guess who's the quarterback coming right after Dak Prescott? That's Joe Burrow currently. So,
okay, there's the line. You found the line.
Yeah. So even if I have to put a second on top of it, if I could trade Joe Burrow and a second for Trevor Lawrence, I'd do it. Because I think Trevor Lawrence is just a way better talent in my mind than Joe Burrow. I know that we like the tried and true and proven players, but to me, Joe Burrow hasn't exactly been proven yet. He played half a season where he was doing decent, but nothing great, nothing lighting the world on fire. I'll stop there. We could talk about him first, and then I'll move on to my next guy. I think basically all of you guys probably disagree
I will say with Joe Burrow, so you said, in the ADP we were looking at, he was at QB, we'll say 7, 8-ish. Is that fair to say with the common consensus?
8 is roughly, yeah.
Yeah. So if you say he's overrated, what quarterbacks in that 9 to 10, 11 range are you taking over Burrow?
All right, definitely Russell Wilson. Like, I'm definitely taking Russell Wilson over Joe Burrow. Now with Matthew Stafford on...
Russell Wilson's QB8, Burrow's QB9, just for a heads up here on that one. The QBs listed ahead of him are obviously Mahomes, Kyler, Josh Allen, Watson, Lamar, Herbert, Dak, Russ. Those are the quarterbacks ahead of him.
Okay, I'm looking at a different one where Russ is ranked one behind him, but yeah, perfect. So Russ on that one, good. I agree with that. So all the other guys above him, I definitely take over him. Matthew Stafford on the Rams now, I definitely take Matthew Stafford over Joe Burrow. Then we're getting into the likes of Ryan Tannehill. I think I like Ryan Tannehill over Joe Burrow. Aaron Rodgers, if I can believe Aaron Rodgers will give me 3 solid years, I'm taking Aaron Rodgers over Joe Burrow. Because, we saw what Aaron Rodgers did with just Devontae Adams, basically, and a little bit of Robert Tonyan, like nothing crazy. Yeah, right around there is probably where I have Joe Burrow as my quarterback 11, quarterback 12. So when I could, get that 4 gap in between, get that value for Joe Burrow, I would really like it because there's no guarantee Joe Burrow is going to be a quarterback 1 in the future. And personally, I'm not betting on it.
All right. So, first off, the fact that you trade him for the 101 with a second-round pick, I think 99% of fantasy players would do that. And that's saying more about Trevor Lawrence than it is about Joe Burrow. I don't think
99% would.
Okay, I mean, whatever. You get. We could debate that. You get the point. You get the point. A large share of people would trade Burrow and a non-first-round pick for the 101. I think a good majority would do that. And like I said, that says more about Trevor Lawrence than it does about Joe Burrow. First off, you saying the Bengals are a team you don't want no part of. I'm confused by that statement because they have 2 young, good wide receivers in Tyler Boyd and T. Higgins.
Which I like.
Right. They perceivably are going to use this number 5 pick to improve their offensive line, which needs help. Joe Burrow is
Go ahead.
Joe Burrow is likely going to miss a good portion of the season coming up, obviously recovering from this knee injury. And I personally, if I'm the Bengals, probably just shut him down for the year because by the time he's going to be able to come back in Week 10, they're probably going to be out of it anyway, I would assume. So then you probably add another high-end draft pick.
Okay, wait. So let me cut you off there then. So then we're already missing a whole year of Joe Burrow. So his value is just automatically going to go down in your scenario. Like if he's not playing a whole year, which people are not expecting currently, his value is just going to go down at that point. So even if you want to trade him away now and then trade back for him, I wouldn't be opposed to that. Like, there's just no point in trying to hold him right now because his expected value hasn't dropped really. He stayed around the same, but prior to him getting injured, he was right around quarterback 8, and he's still quarterback 8 now. And you're telling me he's gonna miss a whole season? Like,
I would say his value is kind of tied to we don't have a definite timetable for him returning from his injury. If he is out for the entire season, that does hurt his value. Because that's where I'm kind of back and forth on Burrow. Because I do think Burrow is going to be significantly better with a better offensive line because he was running for his life a ton of games last year. But also, I am worried in terms of that's a very serious injury. Like that's a legit injury. His knee got just completely fucked up. So I don't know how that recovery is going to be. So that's what makes it hard for me to judge him right now. Where I can't really argue JT because of that injury.
Quick question. Which of the quarterbacks coming in, rookie quarterbacks, not named Trevor Lawrence, would you rather have, if any, than Joe Burrow?
Trey Lance.
Probably none.
You would rather have both.
I mean, in terms of level of prospect, like if we're taking the injury into account, listen, I'm not a freaking doctor. I don't know. Yeah. But if we're looking at the level of prospect that these guys were, Joe Burrow to me would be probably the clear QB2.
But who kicked Joe Burrow out of Ohio State? Who made Joe Burrow leave Ohio State?
I don't care about that, dude. Tom Brady was struggling to get a starting job at Michigan. Now he's
Tom
the GOAT,
Brady is
right?
such a crazy anomaly to anything. Like no 6th-round pick is ever like.
Little do historians know.
Baker Mayfield was a walk-on. Like, I mean, there's plenty of I'm not gonna flame a guy and devalue him because Ohio State
if you're talking about
up.
prospects, like it's clear that Ohio State at least thought that Justin Fields was the better prospect.
I mean, college is different.
Well, Justin Fields wasn't on the team at the time, was he? It was Dwayne Haskins and, it was JT Barrett, right?
It was Fields who beat him up for the next year's starter.
Yeah.
But college is a little bit like Tebow made Cam Newton transfer.
That's fair, but like,
all right. I kind of want to jump in here though, real quick, about the whole Joe Burrow discussion because JT, I actually do agree with you that I kind of agree that both him and Herbert's price tag for me is a little bit too high for this simple reason, right? Just look at Aaron Rodgers. For some reason, Aaron Rodgers is incredibly discounted because he's perceived as this old grandpa quarterback that's going to retire next year, and it's been that same story for years and years and years, right? With young quarterbacks, they are perennially overvalued in Dynasty, in my opinion, which it can pan out, right? We've seen Kyler Murray and Josh Allen pan out heavily, and it helps out your team. But the thing with quarterback that is wildly different from a lot of the other positions in Dynasty is that you can't just play well the first 2 or 3 years and expect that to carry you in a starting job. As a quarterback, you need to improve every single year you take the field. And it is the hardest thing to improve on. The more tape that gets out on you and the better you perform, the more these really smart defensive coordinators, when they go to sleep at night, are thinking, fuck, how do I stop Patrick Mahomes? Fuck, how do I stop Josh Allen? Fuck, how do I stop Joe Burrow? And I mean, just look at Sam Darnold, right? I know this isn't the perfect example, but it's the one that came to my mind. He was a guy the first 2 seasons in the league was looked at as, oh, wow, he's a great young quarterback. If you go look at the YouTube comments on his good games from his rookie year, they're all going to say, wow, bright future ahead. So glad the Jets got this guy. Can't wait to see what he's doing in 3 years. Well, look what happened 3 years later, right? That's what's tough about the quarterback position that I think isn't priced into either one of these guys, is that you can't just do it for 1 year. You can't just it is the toughest thing to be really consistent as a quarterback. That's why it's one of the hardest positions in sports, and that's why they get paid the big bucks.
Exactly. I think Lounis might have mentioned it quickly while you're talking, but the likes of Carson Wentz and Jared Goff, we're seeing what's going on with them currently. And people forget, although it's not guaranteed Joe Burrow's going to play, Jake did mention the theory that, the Bengals might just sit him. People forget, a sophomore slump, is also a thing for quarterbacks. A lot of quarterbacks do have that second year kind of issue. We've seen it with, Baker Mayfield and Cam Newton are the ones that kind of come to mind where they've struggled adapting and going into their second year because it's different. The NFL is different. There's nothing like the NFL. And so it's just at the price he's at with the injury he has. And I know Jake said they're probably going to get an offensive lineman this year. They're probably going to have a high pick next year where they could get an offensive lineman in the first round again next year. But even then, assuming both of them pan out, it's still a tough offensive line.
JT. You got to remember, this is the frickin' Chargers and the Bengals we're talking about. These are two organizations that we just got finished ruining 2 great quarterbacks' careers. Phillip Rivers didn't do shit. Carson Palmer didn't do shit. These guys were immensely ultra-talented quarterbacks. Now, all of a sudden, because we see Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert have a few good games, we're all of a sudden assuming that these organizations that have proven they could never sustain a good quarterback, that we knew that Rivers and Palmer had the talent. We're just going to all of a sudden assume, oh, yeah, they can do it this time. For some reason, now they can do it because maybe they have some different coaches. Listen, I don't know. Maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm the batshit crazy one, but...
I mean, we're the ones going against consensus. This isn't the popular opinion right now. So,
Yeah.
We might be the crazy ones.
It's gonna take more than a good tackle to take the Bengals from 29th in yards and points to all of a sudden be crowning the AFC, right? Like,
yeah.
I don't know. That's just me.
There is a difference, though, between winning the AFC and being a good fantasy quarterback. So we've seen plenty of good fantasy quarterbacks on bad teams.
But to that point, though, Joe Burrow doesn't really have the mobility that, especially after his knee injury, that like a lot of good fantasy quarterbacks we're starting to see do have. Like the Josh Allens, the Deshaun Watsons, obviously.
I don't really care. He's so good in the pocket, though.
But he has to attempt so many passes. Like the only game he had over 30 points, and one of only like 3 he had the entire season over 20, was against the Browns when he threw over 50 times. Like if I'm relying on Joe Burrow to have to throw it like 40 to 50 times each game, like that concerns me. That's a big concern.
Yeah, but I just want to see improvement. I don't really care about what either of these guys did. Like, to be completely honest, even with Tua, right? Because we don't have Tua in the conversation. Whatever guy I see the most improvement out of, that's who I want to buy. But yeah, JT, let's go to your next guy. We've been hammering Joe Burrow too much.
Poor Joe Burrow. I like Joe Burrow too, but not
Me
the
too.
price.
I like him a lot too. It's just
that recovery from his injury is going to be the major dictation for me.
Yeah, it's going to be hard to Sorry, I'm sticking on the same point, but it's going to be hard for him to improve right now when he's in a cast and whatnot, or a brace. All right, my other guy, another one that's a hot take, 2020 rookie. Some that have been flying up people's charts. And you know what? Honestly, I had him high too, right? But then I saw this Dynasty ADP and whatnot. I'm not sure where he's at in the one that you guys were using, but in the ones I'm using, he was running back 8. And to me, that's just way too high for the Ravens running back, J.K. Dobbins. I get that he averaged 6 yards per carry. That's something that people keep harping on. He had over 6 yards per carry. Just give the ball to him more times per game. That's going to equate to a lot more production. And, of course, it will. It will increase to more production. But Gus Edwards had over 5 yards per carry. People don't talk about that. Gus Edwards on the Ravens had over 5 yards per carry. And he's still there. And Lamar Jackson's still there. So while J.K. Dobbins will likely become the lead back, which he kind of was starting to become near the end of the season, and he will have higher production, he's not running back 8 value to me, because I don't think he'll ever be that true workhorse running back unless the Ravens just change the entire philosophy of their team, their offense. Their wide receiving attack is the worst in the league, if not one of the worst, right? Their wide receiver coaches somehow got hired by the Texans. I don't think we ever talked about that, guys. We should talk about that at some point. But their wide receiver attack left. It's got to increase. Like, they've got to get more yards per wide receiver. Where are the yards going for J.K. Dobbins? Where's his opportunity coming from? And that's just my issue with him. I'm not taking him at running back 8. We've seen it happen with a lot of running backs in the past. Just most notably, Miles Sanders and Josh Jacobs flew up boards after their rookie season, and now they've kind of come back down to earth because people have seen, they're good, but they're not that workhorse, amazing talent good. They're solid. So to me, J.K. Dobbins, overrated.
Is he? Because I don't know if I can put him as high as 8. But is he still an RB1 to you? Because for me, I'd probably have him around 10.
Yeah. To be honest, I want him in my running back. I want him in the running back 10 category. I think I've argued for him to be in the running back 10 category before, but when I think about it, I just think longer and harder about it. I don't know if he can really be ever that running back 10. There's just too much going on in Baltimore. There's too many people that can run the ball, that can take opportunities away from him. And even if he has those opportunities, he's not going to sustain 6 yards per carry. It's just, no one really can. It's really hard to. I don't see it. Jaker.
I like him.
Yeah, I mean, if you've listened to the pod, you know my take on the Ravens. Sell them all. Everyone except
J.K. Dobbins.
Except J.K. Dobbins. However, as you said, a running back 8 is just too high for me. I do like J.K. Dobbins. I like him a lot. If I had him on my team, he's not going anywhere. But to go out and take him as the running back 8 overall in Dynasty, I just can't do it. There's just too many other good backs in the league.
I have him RB9. I think that's a relatively fair price for him. RB8. I mean, I don't have him at RB8, but he's pretty damn freaking close. I have him in the same tier as the RB8. So the one thing that I really like about J.K. Dobbins, and this is coming from a Steelers fan, right? I've seen what Mark Ingram can do in that system. I've seen what plenty of damn running backs can do in that system. The one guy I am really nervous about of all these good Ravens running backs, Ray Rice and there's a bunch of older ones that are pretty good. J.K. Dobbins is one that's definitely up there in terms of guys that I am nervous about for my Steelers to have to tackle in the years upcoming. I do think that we, unsurprisingly are going to see his role increase. I actually wouldn't be surprised if they start to try and use him in a lot of the stuff that they were doing last year, similar to what the Packers do, where they have Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins on the field in the red zone and have J.K. They like to motion him across. Sometimes they'll do that little quick tapper to him. I wouldn't be surprised if they'll do a play action to Gus Edwards and hit J.K. in the flat. And just this year J.K. Dobbins is so good in the red zone. I don't really see that changing with his skill set. He was good in the red zone at Ohio State. He's good in the NFL. I think he's going to stay good. I do agree that J.K. Dobbins, if you're buying him, he's going to come at an arm and a leg, and I'm not sure I'm going to pay that price. But of all these rookie running backs, aside from Jonathan Taylor, J.K. Dobbins is the only one that I can really get on board with giving up an arm and a leg for right now.
Are you not worried about Lamar Jackson taking carries? Are you not worried about, Gus Edwards?
It opens up the field for him. That's exactly what I wanted J.K. Dobbins to go to a system like the Ravens. I don't want him to go to the Falcons. Because they have Matt Ryan, there's so much less space on the field. When you do these zone reads, there's a defender that is unaccounted for in your blocking scheme by design, which creates a numbers advantage for your offensive line. Dude, I love that for the Ravens. I don't really care if J.K. Dobbins gets 1.2 less carries per game because of it. I'd rather have the space that it creates on the field for him.
And plus, real quick, to Jake's thing, Mark Ingram, not the most recent season, but the season before, with Lamar Jackson on offense, it was in standard RB7 and PPR RB11, so I'm guessing half PPR probably around 9 somewhere. And I think Dobbins is better than Mark Ingram at age 30.
My one other point, though, is, are you guys not concerned that teams have figured out the Greg Roman offense and that teams do know what's going on now and that they're more prepared for the Ravens and they're now ready to stop the Ravens? Because that's what I'm concerned about. That's what I've got issues with.
No. I don't know. I agree. I agreed with them. We had a video on the channel a while back where I did a little bit of an analysis on the Ravens, and I agree that the scheme was a little basic, but it was mainly the passing scheme. The running scheme, I mean, when the Rams were insane with Todd Gurley, they ran the same play 61% of the time out of basically the same personnel grouping. And that's the thing about the running game, is that if you're good and you got a great offensive line with a great back, you don't have to disguise anything. It's just hat on a hat, you can run, and we're just going to be more physical than you and control the field. I think that the Ravens can do that with J.K. Dobbins. And having Lamar Jackson is just an added bonus. In my opinion, at least. Yeah. The one thing I can see that I do kind of agree with you guys with is that, I mean, the Ravens have just wanted, it looks like, to go to more of a committee style of a backfield. That was one of my concerns with J.K. Dobbins coming in from Ohio State, which I think he's kind of disproven to me a little bit because he's definitely gotten a lot bigger. But when I saw him at Ohio State, I just kind of asked the question myself, is this guy really going to get 19, 18, 20-plus carries a game? To me, he seemed like the kind of guy, I'll give him the ball 13, 14 times, a handful of passes. He doesn't have the best hands, but on that little motion tap bullshit, so you really don't have to have the best hands to get involved. But I think that's my one concern, is that when you look at Jonathan Taylor, he's the kind of guy, dude, just hand him the ball 20 times. He'll make something happen. J.K. Dobbins, I could hand him the ball 20 times, and things might not happen. That's the problem. They could. He's a home run kind of back, but he's not the kind of dude where on my play chart, on my card, I have a big red circle saying, make sure this guy gets 20 carries. That's not the kind of running back that J.K. Dobbins is.
Yeah. I think we covered that pretty well. I think he's overrated. Jake, I think, would kind of agree. Lounis and Frank, probably not. Only time will tell. Lounis, who are your rookies that are not rookies? Sorry, players that are overrated.
Well, I mean, they are rookies.
Maybe
So.
rookies.
So again, I'm doing this. I think both these guys are really good. I'm just saying overrated in comparison to how they're being drafted currently in startup drafts in this month of January. So I'll start with the receiver I picked. I picked Justin Jefferson because according to Dynasty ADP for January, he's being drafted as a top 5 receiver, and specifically for the one we used at wide receiver 3, which I do think he is a wide receiver 1 in Dynasty. I can't put him top 5, probably not even top 7. I'd probably have him around like 10, probably in that range. He's just someone, again, he had
you have him all the way at 10?
Yeah.
Jesus Christ, Loon.
I mean,
low.
What for Jefferson, I want to make sure I'm saying this correct. Yeah. So he's super young, 21 years old. It's just, I don't expect that kind of production to continue. Because, I mean, if we're doing comparisons, Justin Jefferson had that 1,400-yard season at 21, and then Chris Godwin had his 1,350 at 22, 23. But the perception on both of them are, like, drastically different. And I do think Jefferson's a little bit more talented, but I'm not going to put enough value into one season where he's suddenly jumping in my top 5 over receivers who have proved it. Like, I don't think I could put him ahead of DK. Can't put him ahead of Tyreek. Not putting him ahead of Devontae Adams. Not putting him ahead of DeAndre Hopkins. Let me just pull up the list of receivers really quick here specifically. I understand this being the unpopular opinion. Oh, no, I'm not putting him ahead of A.J. Brown. I don't know if I can put him ahead of Diggs. For me, I personally like CD Lamb a little bit more, but I understand someone having him over, people having him over CD.
What about Calvin Ridley?
And I was going to say, and then Calvin Ridley also, where I think him and Ridley are super close. At that point, if you give it to Ridley, he'd be wide receiver 9. So that's what I'm saying.
Damn, you have Ridley at wide receiver 9?
Ridley's at 8.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I kind of agree with you, Loon. Like, to me, I don't have Justin Jefferson in my tier 1 of receivers. My tier 1 consists of Tyreek Hill, Devontae Adams, and DK Metcalf, with borderline tier 1, but in tier 2, Calvin Ridley. I think that Calvin Ridley, though, if I were to make my rankings again today, would be tier 1, with Justin Jefferson then being the top of tier 2. I think one thing with Justin Jefferson, though, is that his value will change depending on what kind of team you are. Because if I'm a team that absolutely sucks and I'm just looking for a core foundation of receivers, Justin Jefferson and Calvin Ridley and DK Metcalf, those are going to be my top 3 guys, right? But if I'm a team that is even semi-competitive, then I agree with you. I'm going to have guys like DeAndre Hopkins, Stephon Diggs, Devontae Adams, Tyreek Hill, definitely in the question over him. Because, once again, the Dynasty community, yes, youth is important, but we tend to overvalue youth, and I think that Justin Jefferson could be a prime example of that. The goal of the game is not to have the youngest team. The goal of the game is to win championships. And I can at least see where you're coming from in that might be getting a little misconstrued with guys like Justin Jefferson and you expecting him to have 1,400 yards every year on an offense that generally speaking, does not have this production from its receivers every season.
Yeah, exactly. And then you just think about, like, again, we're using Ryan McDowell's January ADP. The price you would pay for Jefferson at wide receiver 3 versus the price you would pay for Terry McLaurin at wide receiver 11. Like, the difference in those is I don't think it's that big between those two receivers. So that's the case I'm making. I still have him in, like I said, the wide receiver 1. I have him closer to 10. Probably I might move like 8 or 9. But I can't put him in that top 5 or even probably top 7.
So let me ask you this question real quick to everyone. Is the consensus, do you guys all have Justin Jefferson ahead of Stephon Diggs?
Yes. I'm here to defend Justin Jefferson if you guys
I might have Diggs ahead of him.
Okay, well I assume my assumption was that Justin Jefferson was going to be ahead. So my point kind of goes out the window, but I'm going to assume that the community is higher on Justin Jefferson.
Yeah, no,
than
general
Stephon Diggs.
consensus is Jefferson, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm going to argue is that if the goal of the game is to win championships, that I can pay less of a price for way more production out of Stephon Diggs. I don't really care about the longevity aspect because I can't plan for 5 years in the future unless my team sucks, and that's all my hope is. If I'm trying to win a championship, I agree. Like, I'd rather have not a ton, but there are a lot of receivers, 5, 6 that I'd rather have over Justin Jefferson pretty easily.
Diggs is also 27, by the way, so he's not like he's, a 30-year-old wide receiver here. He has, he's in that prime of his...
If you look at r/Dynasty, you might as well be Tom Brady, 43 years old if you're 27, God forbid.
Anyone under 26 is an old head. Or over 26.
This year, though, Justin Jefferson was wide receiver 6, while Diggs was wide receiver 3. Like, you're not getting that much more production from Stephon Diggs than you are Justin Jefferson.
I'm just not going to put too much stake into one season.
I'd much
think it's crazy. Like, you guys, I get that it's only one season, right? But 1,400 yards as a rookie, like, has never been done before. Ever. Like,
Chris Godwin was just wide receiver 1 last season at 22, 23
Odell
years
was pretty damn close to that too.
As a rookie, no.
Odell broke 1,000.
Odell broke 1,000, but he missed, I think, the first 3 games his rookie season.
That's fair. But so since 2015, the only wide receivers to go over 1,000 yards were Amari Cooper, Michael Thomas, and A.J. Brown. Right, so Justin Jefferson beat all of them by almost 300 yards. Michael Thomas was the next highest at 1137. Justin Jefferson had 1,400. And I just, Michael Thomas had Drew Brees as his quarterback. Justin Jefferson had Kirk Cousins. I get Adam Thielen's there, but that's some competition taking targets away from Justin Jefferson. And you could be like, oh, well, he's taking coverage away. But that's not the case. Like, if you go and watch the Bears game, the Vikings versus the Bears, Justin Jefferson was getting wide receiver 1 coverage. It wasn't Adam Thielen. Justin Jefferson was getting the wide receiver 1 treatment. If you go and look at the Packers, Jair Alexander was giving Justin Jefferson the wide receiver 1 treatment, not Adam Thielen. And so when teams are already treating this rookie wide receiver as the number 1 wide receiver on the team, and he's putting up 1,400 yards in his rookie season, I just don't get how you guys have him like wide receiver 8, wide receiver 7.
Okay.
He's top 5 for me. He's probably wide receiver 4, I think.
Damn, you have him wide receiver 4.
Well, Calvin Ridley outscored him and was way more injured than he was. So that's why I have Calvin Ridley over him.
I'm gonna list
Stephon Diggs, while he's only 3 spots higher, scored like 35 more fantasy points.
I mean, that's 3 points a game, maybe. Like, we gotta remember that Justin Jefferson. Like, I get that you're not guaranteed to improve, but most rookies do take a step forward. They don't really take a step back, especially when you're talking about the likes of Justin Jefferson, who really didn't do much his first couple games. Like, he didn't have that much production in his first few games.
Trent Richardson begs to differ.
I mean, JT, it's not like I have Justin Jefferson at wide receiver 23. I have him as wide receiver 5. It's just I'm not going to crown him as the wide receiver 1 on my board right now. You know, I just can't do that.
I get that, but
especially because I don't know the stats necessarily, but I know he had a bunch of like erratically long touchdowns on his rise to glory, which, listen, I haven't watched a ton of the film on the Vikings, so I'm not going to act like I'm a Vikings football guru, but it's like Claypool, right? Claypool had a bunch of those crazy big plays, and those are just, for the most part, unsustainable. You know, okay, yeah, he could become a Tyreek Hill, but I'm not going to crown him one after one season.
It's the difference between those two for me is that Claypool was the wide receiver 3 on the Steelers, and teams aren't going to give the wide receiver 3 as much attention as they're giving Justin Jefferson. And not only that, Justin Jefferson had tons of yards after the catch, which shows that he can go out and make those plays. So if anything, I think he's got potential to be Tyreek Hill, but better. Just because he's a bigger guy, he can be more sustainable. He's gonna give you that production. You don't have to make him a gadget player to give him the ball. You don't have to scheme up these funny kind of trick plays and stuff to get the ball to him. He's just gonna beat coverage, and that's why I got him so high.
So yeah, I understand it. It's just a lot of the value for me of Justin Jefferson putting him into the top 3 conversation is just more projection, right? We're saying, oh, well, he can be even better than Tyreek Hill. Well, last year, in a season where he was going off, he wasn't. Tyreek Hill outscored him by 50 or 60 points. Justin Jefferson had nowhere near the amount of touchdowns that Tyreek Hill did. And at the end of the day, Justin Jefferson, while he had a bunch of games where he went off against good corners in number 1 coverage, had also a bunch of dud games at the same time. So, I like Justin Jefferson a lot too. We drafted him in the Dynasty, the 3rd and 20 Dynasty team. But if I can get a haul for him, I'll sell. I'm not attached to him.
The main difference to me, I think it's pretty clear and obvious, of Tyreek Hill and Justin Jefferson is Patrick Mahomes and Kirk Cousins. That's what's giving you the separation in points. And I get it. That's going to be the tough part for Justin Jefferson to deal with, because I don't know what the Vikings' future plan is at quarterback. While we do know Patrick Mahomes will be Tyreek Hill's quarterback for a long time, but the talent's there for Justin Jefferson. The talent is there. And that's all I got.
That's fair.
All right. All right, Lounis.
JT, you're gonna be mad at both my picks.
I know. I'm going to bat against Lounis here. Normally we're not on opposite sides.
I know. Normally me and you are on the same side of everything. I'm sorry I had to do this to you, JT. I've got Deandre Swift, and this is another example where he's going to be great. He's an extremely valuable dynasty asset. I'm saying this in comparison to his ADP, because he has become a top 7 running back drafted and a first-round pick in startups, which I think that's too high for me. That's too high for me. I don't know if I can take him over guys like let's see the running backs he's ahead of. I don't know if I can take him above a Nick Chubb. I don't know him and
his ADP is higher than Justin Jefferson, right?
Yeah, it's 1 spot ahead.
I have Justin, we're on the topic of whether or not Justin Jefferson is overvalued or not. I have him way ahead in value of DeAndre Swift.
Agreed.
Yeah, he's ahead of a Tyreek Hill. Give me Tyreek Hill over Swift any day. But I'll just compare him to running backs.
No, if you do the whole draft, the point's a lot more compelling.
Wait, what? I was just saying, you compare him to a Nick Chubb, J.K. I think I like J.K. Dobbins a little bit more. And
what QBs is his ADP ahead of? Do you know?
All of them in non-superflex, all of them. I just don't know.
Yeah, these are non-superflex rankings.
You know what? I could try and pull it up real quick for you. But yeah, so what has you against DeAndre Swift, Lounis, before I jump in and defend my guy?
That he's had like 2 good games and then he's running back 7.
So
I don't know why, Jake, but when you argue points, it is sometimes just hilarious.
he's behind Joe Burrow, quarterback 8 in Superflex.
Okay.
He's getting picked 19, so end of second round in Superflex leagues.
Yeah.
Wait, Joe Burrow's QB 8? I have him at 10. What the hell is going on?
No, different. I'm on a Superflex thing. I'm not on that ADP thing.
And again, I do have him as in general dynasty rankings in RB1, but I have him probably in that 10 to 12 range. I don't know if I can put him top 8.
All right. So here I go.
We've had the DeAndre Swift argument way too many times.
Well, we're gonna have it again.
JT, you get it.
I've got something different for you.
Let JT defend his guy.
Yeah, I'm not even gonna defend him. All I'm saying is we've seen what's happening with GameStop. We see what's happening with Dogecoin. All I'm telling you guys is this is the point in time. This is the point in time where you either have your diamond hands and you hold and you ride DeAndre Swift to the moon, or you are a paper hand weakling who goes and throws them away. And this is why you're bad at Dynasty if you get rid of DeAndre Swift. Because this man is the next Alvin Kamara. I guarantee it. That's the JT stamp of approval.
That's the JT guarantee?
Yeah, JT guarantee.
Jake.
Diamond hand.
Can we get a shirt that says that?
We're riding DeAndre Swift to the moon. That's all I've got.
To the moon.
Well, I'll come in then because I'm even lower on DeAndre Swift than Lounis is. I was going to put him as my overrated player, but I feel like I've been doing that every freaking episode since the dawn of time. Yeah, my whole difference, if we're going to compare him to Alvin Kamara, is just DeAndre Swift, what I saw on his college tape, he just doesn't break enough tackles on the second level compared to Alvin Kamara. Like, when I went back and looked at Alvin Kamara at Tennessee, I'm pretty sure, Tennessee.
Yeah, Tennessee.
Man, the guy was it was just as slippery as he was in the NFL on the second level. DeAndre Swift, I just necessarily haven't seen it. But you're also talking to the guy that's probably the lowest on DeAndre Swift in the entire Dynasty community. So I might not be the best person to talk to in this regard.
Now, to be fair, to your point, I don't necessarily, I don't think DeAndre Swift is as good as Alvin Kamara in that regard. And to be honest, I don't really even expect him to be that great. I just think we're in a period of time where the top running backs were so elite and so good with the Saquon Barkley, CMC, Alvin Kamara, Dalvin Cook kind of, that era. And I think we're going to start phasing out of that era. And who's left to rise to the top? That's the cream rises to the top, and that's where we have the DeAndre Swifts, obviously Jonathan Taylor, J.K. Dobbins, and the likes, Nick Chubb, obviously, kind of start to, get increase in value. And I just don't see any running backs in the next year, definitely, like rookie running backs that are going to ever challenge these guys for that value. Maybe 2 years from now, 3 years from now, I know Tank Bigsby.
Tank Bigsby is the future.
What's his name? Breece Hall. Breece Hall, I like a lot too. They're potentially going to go and challenge him, but in the coming years, I just don't see a lot of great prospects that are going to rise to the top like this rookie running back class is, and so while they might never be as good as the likes of CMC and Alvin Kamara ever were, I think they still will be near the top of their running back era, because that's just the era that we're in now.
Yeah, it's crazy. Before we move on to Jake and what Lounis has to say, if you look at the fantasy standings, if at least you're in like half point or full point PPR, the top 4 backs are legitimately 100 points ahead of any other running back. It is absurd.
Yeah. It's just some players have to fill in that void when they start to age out, and I just don't see
if you
anyone
had
else
one
doing
of those 4 running backs, you were like guaranteed a playoff spot.
Yeah, I mean, you should. You should get there, yeah.
I was going to say, JT, just before we move on, where would you have him ranked around RB what for Dynasty rankings?
Bro, I think we've had this debate before, but like RB 5 or 6. I mean, it's hard for me. Nick Chubb's an interesting one just because Kareem Hunt's there. I like Nick Chubb more as the player.
But you like Swift more in Dynasty?
I just see the Lions, like, who else can they build offense around? Like, I think it's going to be DeAndre Swift that they build the offense around. And
Wentz defense.
Yeah, JT, you have Swift RB6 right now in your rankings on our Google Sheet.
I got to update those. But, yeah, that's like what I agree with. Is that what I said? I feel like that's what I said.
Right one spot behind Nick Chubb. Yeah, like exactly what you said.
I'm consistent. Say what you want about me, but at least I'm consistent. All right, we're going to move on from DeAndre Swift then. We've had this debate 100 times on this podcast.
Yeah.
I'll go on my grave.
All right, let's hit us, Hank, man.
All right, boys. My first overrated player is the slant boy himself, Michael Thomas. Obviously, he missed a lot of time this year with his injuries or punching his teammate in the face. I'm really sure which one was the bigger time misser there. But Drew Brees looks like he's going to retire. Hasn't officially done it yet, but he did restructure his contract to take the league minimum, so it's looking like he's going to retire. And with the uncertain future of the Saints quarterback, he's also entering his age 28 season, coming off an injury-prone season. He's still being drafted as a top 10 wide receiver, and I just don't think he's worth that anymore. What do you guys think?
I agree with you, actually. And I'm going to bring up guys around that range and ask you guys, who are you taking over here? If you could pick one right now, would you rather have CeeDee Lamb or Michael Thomas?
Tough.
I think I take Lamb.
I think Lamb, too. My thoughts on Lamb have
in a vacuum,
changed.
yeah.
Yeah, my thoughts on Lamb have decreased recently, but I still would rather have Lamb.
Michael Thomas or Terry McLaurin?
Scary.
Yeah, give me Terry.
I might take Michael Thomas there.
I'm taking McLaurin, especially because I think the Redskins quarterback situation will improve next season.
Football team.
Oh my God, I'm so
yeah, the football team.
If Roger Goodell fucked it up, I'm excused.
I would love. Side note though, in the NFL draft, I really hope they say
oh my God, that'd be so
11th pick, the Redskins take. I think that would be the funniest thing of all time.
I wonder if there's gonna be gambling odds on that.
They were not the football team then. I forgot about that. Yeah, very different times.
This one's tough. I think it's interesting. DJ Moore or Michael Thomas?
I mean, I'm probably DJ Moore's biggest believer, so I'm gonna say
DJ Moore. Yeah.
Yes, I think it's DJ Moore, but just by like a small amount.
Side note, completely off topic, but I just want Deshaun Watson on the Panthers. Sorry, we could go back now.
I actually kind of do too.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I think all what we just said, comparing those receivers backs up Jake's points, because those are all those guys in like that 6 to 12 range that we just listed off. Few of them that we'd rather have over Michael Thomas. So no, I agree with you on this, Jake.
Are we all in consensus on this?
Yeah,
do we all think
we're an anti-slant boy podcast.
I mean,
I think I have him at 11 right now, 11 or 12.
Who are the two receivers you have right above him and the two you have right below him?
Two I have right above are CeeDee Lamb and Scary Terry McLaurin. Right below are Keenan Allen and Allen Robinson. Which, like, now that I'm thinking about it, like, I might put Keenan Allen above. It's just Keenan Allen I don't think has that ceiling that Michael Thomas has shown. That's the only problem.
That's right. Keenan Allen and Thomas are tough for me. That's close. I think I might give the edge to Thomas because he's younger. But that one's really close.
But also Allen Robinson too, man. Like, we need to start considering Allen Robinson up here, because Allen Robinson, God forbid the man gets a quarterback. Like, holy shit.
Yeah, he's putting up wide receiver 1 numbers on like the worst teams, like the worst teams. So
what if he somehow goes to the Chiefs? Like, what happens if he goes to the Chiefs?
I said this. I sent this in our Twitter group chat. Actually, Allen Robinson tweeted out saying, "No cap, I want a ring." After Brady won, and I said this man's about to sign with the Chiefs for $0. And I think if he goes to the Chiefs, it would just be game over. That offense would be unstoppable.
I don't think you can hype him up enough at that point. Allen Robinson on the Chiefs, like.
Oh my God!
Where did he has to shoot? He's shooting up in the top 10. It's like, okay, who would you rather have at that point? Allen Robinson or AJ Brown or Scary Terry, right? Like, or CD Lamb. Like, he's in that kind of conversation at that point if he goes there, right?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. He's consistently a wide receiver 1 playing with the likes of Blake Bortles, Nick Foles, and Mitch Trubisky as his quarterbacks.
The boat. Come on, it's the boat.
yeah, right.
All right. I mean, it's something to look to though. Michael Thomas, what his quarterback is going to be, who his quarterback is going to be. I think that will probably drastically change his value, perceived value at least. For like, you know, it could be anywhere.
What quarterback do you think would put him at a higher perceived value? Jameis or Taysom Hill or rookie?
I think Jameis.
Yeah, I definitely think Jameis would put him at the higher value just because he'll just sling it. He'll just throw it 40 times to him.
I actually think he'd be great with Taysom Hill. Like, I saw Taysom Hill, like, Michael Thomas is the ideal type of receiver that Taysom Hill needs to have success in the NFL.
He's the slant boy. He's running the short routes that Taysom Hill can hit.
Well, like, Taysom Hill, he just wants to hit any route that he can throw a fastball, right? I don't know for sure, but I can imagine that Taysom Hill has some sort of baseball in his background because it looks like he's kind of like a shortstop when he's throwing the ball, right? He's just, or like a third baseman where he's just, every throw, a little crow hop, and he's just throwing it on a rope, right? And you know, you get Michael Thomas doing his slant boy slants or a curl or small little double moves here and there. I think that's exactly what Taysom Hill would need. And if I'm a Michael Thomas owner, that's who I'm hoping gets the gig.
Would you rather have a rookie or Jameis then, if you have Taysom as the number 1 option for him?
Jameis for the memes.
Yeah.
For the memes. All right.
For the memes.
All right.
All right. So moving on to my next guy.
Hold on.
I think this is our last guy.
Episode? Last guy of the episode, and then we'll wrap it up. All right. Here's with the Jake.
You mentioned you alluded to him earlier, but it's the Juju effect himself. It is Juju Smith-Schuster. He's obviously had a good year. I think he finished wide receiver 17 in half PPR, which is a very good season for him. Obviously, it looks like Big Ben will be back with the Steelers next year to play out the end of his contract. But Juju is a free agent, and like we've mentioned in previous episodes and this episode, when people leave and go to a new team, most times they do not live up to expectations, and their stats get worse. Obviously, there are some outliers there, but that's the general history of what goes on when players go to a new team. And I just think one team, I already saw a report today that the Jets are interested in Juju. I just think like he's gonna be asked too much of, and it's just his value's gonna shoot up. And perceived value just because people are going to say he's the number 1 receiver. We've seen this game before. Once AB left, everyone thought Juju was going to be, a top 10 dynasty wide receiver for years and years to come. And he's just never lived up to it. So if his value even goes up a little bit, and I think even where it is right now, just with the people guessing where he's going to sign, I just think he's one of the most overrated players in all of fantasy football. There's no way around it. He's a great football player and a guy I'd love to have on my actual NFL team, but in terms of fantasy numbers, he just doesn't do it for me.
Yeah, I think with Dynasty, out of those 3 Pittsburgh receivers, he's probably the one I value the least out of those 3. I think I'd rather have Claypool and Deontay Johnson.
These receivers, their value. I saw a study on Twitter. I don't know who to give credit to. Someone did a study where over the entire regular season, they put out a poll I think it was weekly, maybe it was monthly, but it was which Steelers wide receiver would you rather own? It was Juju, it was Deontay Johnson, and it was Claypool. And it changed like month to month. Like, it could have been any of those three. I still feel like people don't know which of those three is the best. I personally am
it
most
probably
afraid
just
of
rotated depending on which number one corner went on the. It's like, okay, if the number one corner went on Claypool, then it's like, okay, he's at the bottom, he sucks, and then it just rotates, right?
Exactly. I'm still worried about, like, I'm not buying into Deontay. I like Deontay. I think he's good, but at the value he's at, I'm not buying into Deontay. Juju's obviously Juju, and I guess we'll stick talking to him. I agree, Jake. I think he's overrated, but I think we're starting to get to the point where a lot of people are starting to get onto this side now. I think it's about a 50-50 split of he's overrated versus, like, they still recognize the name and think that he could potentially put up wide receiver 1 numbers again. And I think that's where we're at the impasse right now. And you know, if you're a Juju owner, it's going to be tough finding those people that are still believers, because you were probably one of them. So then you've only got like 4 or 5 people in the league that you could potentially trade with.
The thing I will say is if Juju signs a place with an established number 1 receiver, I think his value goes up, because him as that good wide receiver 2, I think it's the Juju effect in reverse. It's the reverse Juju effect. The coverage will shift away from him, and that's when he'll really succeed, just when, like, AB was in Pittsburgh.
The Mr. Big Chest effect.
I mean, I feel like that's the definition of the Juju effect, though, no? With the good wide receiver.
Well, the Juju effect was more, like, talking about the downside, like, once the one.
I guess,
when it was like when AB left, and now everyone thought he was going to be good.
So wait, to all three of you, where is, out of those 3 Pittsburgh receivers, are you ranking Juju 1, 2, or 3? In terms of who you'd much
3.
I'd rather own in Dynasty. I have him at 3 also.
I'm with you.
You guys all have him at 3?
Yeah. Claypool is a stud, and I like Deontay a lot.
I have him at I have him at 2, I think, above Deontay, but I don't love Claypool that much. Like, I like Claypool.
Claypool was really good.
I'll put Juju at 2.
I think all these motherfuckers are overrated, and this is coming from a Steelers fan.
I tend to agree. I like all of them, but I think everyone has them so hyped up that it's.
I like him a lot too. I liked Claypool coming out. I like Deontay a whole lot coming out. I think Deontay is probably the best person to own. It's just, like you said, at his price, like, dude, why am I paying a top 24 Dynasty price for a guy that has just been so wish-wash every game?
Are you talking about Deontay or Juju?
Deontay.
You can throw that same narrative to any single one of these fuckers.
Actually, yeah, that's true.
Like,
Juju,
the problem with owning any single one of these players has been consistency. And at the end of the day, in fantasy football, it is nice to have high-ceiling players, but if you have that week in the playoffs where you have 2 receivers get 3 points, like, that wins you and loses you games. I had all these Steelers receivers on my roster, and every single week it was just a game of I start one guy and then the other guy goes off, and it loses you fantasy football games. If you can package these guys together to get someone that's actually consistent, that results in more wins than having more perceived value.
Yep. Completely agree with you, Frank. All these Steelers, it's just, especially with the aging of Ben Roethlisberger, like I said, he's probably going to be there next year, but the following year his contract's up. And then who knows what happens in Pittsburgh from there. It's an uncertainty that a lot of fantasy players, especially Dynasty players, like to shy away from.
All right. I think that sums it up, and I think that will be the end of the episode, unless you guys got anything else to add. Otherwise, all right. See you guys next week. Thank you all for liking our videos, watching them. Subscribe, please. Comment below if you're on YouTube. Give us a rating on whatever. Apple, I don't even know if Spotify does ratings, but if they do, please, you could use one. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys.